It was 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. I remember the exact time because the sound of my phone vibrating on the conference table is burned into my memory. I was in the middle of a client meeting, half listening to quarterly projections, when I noticed the number flashing across my screen. It wasn't saved in my contacts, just a random local number. Normally, I'd ignore it, but that day, something in my gut twisted hard, a quiet warning that made me grab the phone before it stopped ringing. Mr. Rodriguez, this is Principal Carter from Riverside Elementary. We have a situation with your daughter, Emma. A situation? My chest tightened. What kind of situation? Is she hurt? No, she's not hurt. There was a hesitation in her voice, one that turned my blood cold. But she's missing. The air left my lungs. Missing? What do you mean missing? She's 5 years old. The room around me faded. The murmurs, the clicking pens, the projector light. All I could hear was the principal's trembling voice. A woman came to pick her up an hour ago, she said. She claimed to be her aunt. She had a note that looked like it was from you, giving permission. I gripped the edge of the table until my knuckles went white. I don't have a sister, I whispered. My wife doesn't have a sister. Who took my daughter? We're reviewing the security footage now, Principal Carter said. The woman signed in as Linda Rodriguez. She seemed to know Emma, called her by name. She was well-dressed, professional, blonde hair, about 50. She drove a white Mercedes. White Mercedes. My heart dropped like a stone. My breath came fast, uneven. I knew that description. I knew that voice. Diane Patterson, HOA president, neighborhood tyrant, the woman who had been making our lives miserable since the day we moved into Riverside Heights. I'm calling the police, I said, already on my feet. They're already here, Mr. Rodriguez. But please, come to the school. I didn't even grab my laptop. I just ran, down the office hall, through the glass doors, into the blinding sun. My car keys shook in my hand as I fumbled to unlock the door. I drove like a man possessed, tires screeching as I blew through every light between downtown and Riverside Elementary. Every second that passed, I imagined my daughter's face, her curls bouncing, her little backpack, her laughter, and the thought of her alone, scared, with that woman. It nearly ripped me apart. When I pulled into the school parking lot, police cars were everywhere. Blue and red lights flickered against the building's glass doors. My legs felt like they were filled with sand as I stumbled toward the entrance. Principal Carter met me in the hallway. She looked pale, her hands shaking. Mr. Rodriguez, I'm so sorry, she said again. Show me the footage, I demanded. She led me into a small security office. The monitor flickered, then played back the moment my nightmare began. There she was, Diane Patterson. Perfect hair, designer blazer, fake smile. She leaned over the counter, charming the receptionist. Hi, I'm Linda Rodriguez, she said smoothly. Emma's aunt. Her father asked me to pick her up early for a doctor's appointment. He sent a note. The receptionist barely looked at the paper. Of course, she said cheerfully. Moments later, my little girl walked into frame, tiny, innocent, holding her backpack. She hesitated when she saw Diane. I don't know you, she said, voice small but brave. Of course you do, sweetheart, Diane smiled. I'm Mrs. Patterson from your neighborhood. Your daddy said it's okay. My throat tightened as I watched Diane take Emma's hand. My baby looked back, uncertain, then followed her out the door. Timestamp, 1:35 p.m. The clock on the wall said 3:15, an hour and 40 minutes. My daughter had been gone for an hour and 40 minutes. I turned to the nearest officer, my voice breaking. She's dangerous. You don't understand. She's been harassing us for months. She hates us. He nodded, already speaking into his radio, but I barely heard him. The blood roared in my ears. My knees buckled. My daughter, my Emma, was somewhere out there, trapped with the woman who'd made it her mission to destroy our family. And in that moment, I knew exactly who had taken my little girl. Diane Patterson. the woman who just declared war on a 5-year-old. I used to think moving into Riverside Heights was the best decision I'd ever made for my family. After years of saving, after decades of working double shifts, my wife Sophia and I had finally bought a home with a yard where our daughter could play. A small piece of the American dream, ours at last. But I didn't know that behind those manicured lawns and perfect mailboxes, monsters wore pearls and smiles. The day we moved in, the air smelled like fresh paint and cut grass. Emma twirled on the driveway, giggling as the moving truck unloaded. "Daddy, can we plant flowers?" she asked. Sophia laughed. "Yes, baby. We'll make this place beautiful." Then came the knock. 3 polite taps, sharp, deliberate. When I opened the door, she was standing there like she owned the block. Mid-50s, tailored navy blazer, hair as stiff as her smile. "Welcome to Riverside Heights," she said sweetly. "I'm Diane Patterson, HOA president. I like to personally greet all new homeowners." Her voice carried the kind of warmth that chills the skin. She handed me a thick binder with gold letters across the front. Riverside Heights, Homeowners Association, Rules and Regulations. "I know it's a lot, but maintaining standards is what keeps our property values high," she added. I flipped through the pages, 40 in total. No lawn ornaments, no flags other than the approved American flag, grass no taller than 2 inches, no children's toys visible from the street, no cars in the driveway overnight. Even the shade of black for mailboxes was regulated. Sophia tried to be polite. "That's thorough," she said. Diane's smile tightened. "We believe excellence starts at home. You'll fit in, I'm sure." But we never did. The first violation came 3 days later, a notice taped neatly to our front door. "Unapproved items visible from street, $100 fine." The item was Emma's pink bicycle leaning against the porch rail. I moved it inside immediately, thinking it was a misunderstanding. The second came that weekend. "Vehicle violates aesthetic standards." My 10-year-old Honda was, according to the HOA, unsightly for the community. I remember staring at the paper in disbelief. Sophia wanted to laugh, but there was something in Diane's tone during her follow-up visit that froze the smile on her face. She said, "You'd be surprised how quickly small things lower the neighborhood's quality." Then she looked at us, really looked, and I understood the small things she meant weren't bicycles or cars. The third violation came the next week. Sophia had planted a small herb garden by the kitchen window. Rosemary, basil, cilantro, the smells of home. But apparently, non-decorative vegetation was prohibited without board approval. Diane knocked that morning, clipboard in hand. "You'll need to remove those," she said. "They don't fit the neighborhood aesthetic." Sophia tried to reason with her. "It's just a few herbs. My daughter loves helping me water them." Diane's smile didn't move. "We have landscaping guidelines for a reason. We all have to follow the same rules. Even new families." The way she lingered on "new" made my stomach turn. From that day on, it was constant. Notices appeared weekly, sometimes daily. Noise violations for Emma's laughter. Warnings about unauthorized driveway chalk. Once, Diane even measured our grass with a ruler, frowning when it read 2¼ inches. I started noticing how other families, the ones who looked like Diane, parked their trucks in driveways, hung flags, let kids play ball on the lawn, and no one said a word. But for us, every day was another fine, another warning, another reminder that we didn't belong. Sophia tried to stay strong. "Ignore her," she'd whisper. "She'll get bored eventually." But she never did. Diane's smile was always there, tight, perfect, poisonous. And no matter what we did, it was never enough. We couldn't adjust, not to Diane's standards. For a while, we tried to live around Diane's rules, to exist quietly, like ghosts in our own home. But no matter how careful we were, she always found something to punish us for. It was as if our very presence offended her sense of perfection. And then came the morning that broke whatever peace we still pretended to have. The day Diane declared war. On a 5-year-old's joy. It started on OSE, sunny Saturday. Emma had been outside since breakfast, her little bucket of chalk beside her. I was mowing the lawn while Sophia trimmed the roses. When I looked up, Emma had covered the driveway in color. Bright flowers, stick figures of our family, a giant smiling sun. She was humming softly, her curls glowing in the light. "Look, Daddy," she called proudly. "It's us. You, Mommy, and me." Sophia smiled, taking a picture with her phone. "It's beautiful, baby," she said. And it was. The driveway looked like a child's dream, pure, innocent, temporary. We thought nothing of it. By evening, the chalk would wash away with the sprinklers. But at 7 a.m. the next morning, the knock came. Sharp, impatient, familiar. I opened the door half awake to find Diane Patterson standing there, already dressed like she was heading to a board meeting. Clipboard in hand, expression as cold as the marble angels in a cemetery. "Good morning, Mr. Rodriguez," she said crisply. "We need to discuss your child's vandalism." "Vandalism?" I blinked, still groggy. "What are you talking about?" She stepped aside and pointed at the driveway. The chalk art was still faintly visible in the morning light. Emma's rainbows now pale ghosts of color. "This," Diane said. "Your child has defaced HOA property. The driveway is visible from the street, therefore it falls under HOA jurisdiction. You violated Code Section 14b, subsection 3, unauthorized decorative markings." I stared at her, speechless. "It's chalk," I finally said. "She's 5. It'll wash away." Diane's lips thinned. "We maintain high standards here. If everyone let their children draw all over the concrete, what would our neighborhood look like?" Sophia had joined me at the door, her hair still damp from the shower. "She's a little girl," she said softly. "It's just art. No harm done." Diane's eyes flicked over Sophia, judging, dismissive. "Perhaps in your culture that's acceptable," she said smoothly. "But here, we value order and cleanliness. You'll receive a $500 fine for property damage, and I expect the driveway to be professionally cleaned by Monday." Sophia froze. $500? For chalk? Diane's tone didn't waver. "The HOA owns all surfaces visible from public access. That includes driveways. And frankly, Mrs. Rodriguez, I'm concerned about your family's disregard for community standards. It's becoming a pattern." Something inside me snapped. "You're out of line," I said quietly. "You've been harassing us since we moved in. Our car, our lawn, now our daughter's drawings? Enough." Diane's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "Perhaps if you taught your child to respect boundaries, we wouldn't have this problem. But I suppose that's expecting too much from people like you." The words hit harder than any slap. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. "People like us?" she repeated, voice trembling. Diane smiled then, the kind of smile that said she'd finally spoken the truth she'd been holding back. "I've worked for 20 years to keep this community pristine," she said. "I won't let anyone lower our standards." She turned and walked away, leaving us standing there with her words hanging in the humid air like poison. Sophia went inside and sat at the kitchen table, her hand shaking. "She hates us," she whispered. "She really hates us." I knelt beside her, trying to stay calm even as anger burned in my chest. "We're not going anywhere," I said. "She can't control who lives here. We'll fight every fine, every notice. We have rights." Sophia nodded, but tears slid down her cheeks. "She's not going to stop," she said. "She wants us gone." That night, I tucked Emma into bed. She was still proud of her drawings, blissfully unaware of the ugliness they'd stirred. As I kissed her forehead, I told myself Diane's cruelty couldn't reach beyond petty fines and empty threats. I told myself she was just a bully with a clipboard, but I was wrong. I didn't know how far she'd go. I didn't know she would take my daughter. The drive to Riverside Elementary is a blur in my memory. Just the sound of my own heartbeat pounding louder than the engine. I don't remember red lights, don't remember turns, just the weight of one sentence echoing in my head. Your daughter is missing. The roads bled together until I slammed the car into park in front of the school. The parking lot was swarming with flashing lights. Police cruisers blocked the entrance. Teachers stood in small, shaken clusters, and the air buzzed with a sick tension I could feel in my bones. When I stepped out, my legs nearly gave way. Principal Carter was waiting for me at the door, her face pale, her voice trembling. "Mr. Rodriguez, the police are inside. We're doing everything we can." I could barely speak. "Show me," I said. "Please, just show me the footage." She led me down a long hallway that felt endless. Children's artwork lined the walls, bright rainbows, stick figures, hearts. I had to look away. My little girl's drawings probably hung somewhere in that hallway too. Inside the security office, a detective I hadn't met yet stood beside the monitor. "Mr. Rodriguez, I'm Detective Sarah Chin," she said, calm but firm. "We've reviewed the footage. I think you should see it for yourself." The video flickered to life, time-stamped 1:32 p.m. The front office appeared on screen, quiet and ordinary. Then the door opened, and she walked in. Diane Patterson. Perfect hair, crisp blazer, pearl earrings gleaming under the fluorescent lights. She looked like she belonged anywhere she walked. Her voice carried easily through the audio feed. "Hi, I'm Linda Rodriguez, Emma's aunt. Her father asked me to pick her up early for a doctor's appointment. He sent a note." She handed over a folded piece of paper, her smile warm, practiced, deceitful. The receptionist didn't even hesitate. She scanned the paper, nodded, and said, "Of course. Let me call her classroom." I gripped the desk so hard my fingers went numb. "That's her," I said, voice breaking. "That's Diane Patterson, the HOA president." On the screen, Emma appeared a moment later, her little backpack on, curls bouncing as she walked in. My heart ached at how small she looked. Diane knelt down, smiling like a predator disguised as a friend. "Hi, sweetheart. Your daddy asked me to pick you up. We're going to get ice cream before your appointment, okay?" Emma frowned. "You're not my aunt." The smile didn't even falter. "Oh, you probably just forgot, sweetie. I live in your neighborhood. Your daddy said it's fine. He sent me this note." Emma hesitated, uncertain but trusting, the way all children are taught to trust adults who sound kind. She looked at the receptionist, who smiled back. "Go on, honey. Your aunt's waiting." I watched my daughter take Diane's hand. I watched her leave the frame, her tiny figure walking beside the woman who'd been tormenting our family for months. When the door closed behind them, I felt my stomach drop. The detective paused the video. "Mr. Rodriguez, we're tracing her vehicle now. She drove a white Mercedes, correct?" I nodded, unable to speak. I could hear my pulse in my ears, feel the world closing in around me. The timestamp glowed on the screen. 1:35 p.m. Detective Chin's voice was quiet. "What time is it now?" I looked at the wall clock. 3:15. I felt the room spin. An hour and 40 minutes. My daughter had been missing for an hour and 40 minutes. Detective Sarah Chin had the kind of calm that made you want to believe everything would be okay. She was young, late 30s maybe, but her presence commanded the room. Her dark hair was pulled into a neat bun, her voice steady but not cold, and when she looked at me, I saw something I hadn't felt since the call came in. Control. "Mr. Rodriguez," she said gently, setting down her notepad. "I need you to start from the beginning. Tell me everything you can about Diane Patterson. Every encounter, every threat, every word she's ever said to you." I sat across from her in the small office, my hands trembling. Sophia was on speakerphone, sobbing quietly as I tried to hold it together long enough to speak. "She's our HOA president," I began. "She's been harassing us since the day we moved in. Fines, violations, comments. At first it was small stuff. Our daughter's toys, our car. Then it got personal." Detective Chin nodded. "Personal how?" "She told us we didn't belong. She said we were bringing down the neighborhood. She fined us for chalk drawings, for laughing too loud, for having the wrong color mailbox. She called us people like you." My voice cracked. And now she has my little girl. The detective's jaw tightened, but her tone remained even. Did she ever threaten you directly? I hesitated, remembering the words that had haunted Sophia for weeks. She said, "If you won't follow the rules, maybe you shouldn't live here at all." I thought she meant fines, maybe legal pressure. I never thought she'd… Sophia's voice broke through the phone. She hated us, Detective. I could see it in her eyes. She wanted us gone. Detective Chin wrote something down. All right. We have her license plate and a positive ID from the footage. We've issued an Amber Alert statewide. Every patrol in the region is looking for that white Mercedes. I stood up, pacing. She won't hurt Emma, right? She's just trying to scare us? Chin looked at me steadily. We don't make assumptions, Mr. Rodriguez. We act fast. She turned to her team. Get an officer to the Patterson residence. Now. I followed her out of the office. The police radios were alive with chatter, dispatchers coordinating units across counties. Somewhere in all that chaos, my daughter's name was being spoken over speakers, flashing on highway signs, printed on phones. Amber Alert, missing child, Emma Rodriguez, age 5. The words didn't feel real. The drive to Diane's house felt like a nightmare on repeat. Sophia was still on the line, trying to breathe, whispering prayers between sobs. What if she hurts her, Miguel? What if… She won't. I lied. They're going to find her. I swear they will. When we pulled into Riverside Heights, patrol cars were already in front of Diane's perfect 2-story home. Officers moved across the yard, knocking on the door, shouting for her to come out. A man opened it instead. I recognized him immediately. Mark Patterson, Diane's husband. He looked confused, like someone who'd just woken from a bad dream. Mr. Patterson? Detective Chin stepped forward. We need to speak with your wife. Is she here? Mark blinked. No, she left around noon, said she had HOA business. What's going on? Chin didn't hesitate. Your wife abducted a child from Riverside Elementary. She's driving a white Mercedes. The color drained from his face. What? No, that's impossible. Diane, she wouldn't… His words trailed off when the detective held up her tablet, showing him the school footage. He stared in silence, watching his wife walk out of that building with my daughter's hand in hers. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Then quietly, "Oh my God." He sank down onto the front steps, his head in his hands. What has she done? Mr. Patterson, does she have somewhere she goes when she's upset? A place she might take the girl? He looked up, eyes wide, searching his memory. Her sister's lake house, he said finally. About an hour north. Diane goes there when she's stressed. She keeps a spare key. Detective Chin was already moving. Address? Mark rattled it off, his voice shaking. Please, just bring that little girl home safe. Chin turned toward her team. Get it to dispatch. Full response. Then she looked at me. Mr. Rodriguez, I know this is hard, but we need you to stay here while we move. I took a step forward. No, I'm going. I can't just sit here while she has my daughter. Her gaze softened, but her tone stayed firm. Then stay behind us. Let us do our job. I nodded, my whole body trembling, adrenaline burning through my veins. And as we piled into the cars, sirens roaring to life, I gripped the steering wheel so tight my hands ached and said the only words I could manage. Give me the address. Now. The drive to the lake house felt like a lifetime stretched across an endless road. Police cruisers flew ahead of us, lights slicing through the afternoon haze, sirens echoing against the trees. I followed close behind, knuckles white on the steering wheel, Sophia's voice trembling beside me as she clutched Emma's favorite blanket to her chest. Every minute that passed was another minute our daughter was alone with that woman. Every sound, every curve of the road, felt like a countdown I couldn't stop. Detective Chin's voice came over the radio, sharp and calm. Units, be advised. White Mercedes confirmed on private property. Cabin located on the north edge of Lake Whitmore. Windows covered. No visible movement. Sophia's hand found mine. She has her, she whispered, barely breathing. Oh God, Miguel, she really has her. I wanted to scream, to crash through the trees and drag my daughter out myself, but all I could do was drive and pray. Time slowed into painful fragments, seconds stretching into hours. When we reached the perimeter, officers blocked the dirt road leading to the cabin. Chin stepped out first, issuing quiet commands into her radio. Hold perimeter. No lights, no sirens. We don't spook her until we have eyes on the child. Sophia and I waited by the car, both of us shaking. She was crying silently now, the kind of tears that left tracks down her cheeks without sound. I kept watching the line of trees, desperate for any movement. A few officers moved forward with binoculars and scoped cameras. The radio crackled. "We have visual through the back window," a voice said. "Female suspect matching Patterson's description. Child present, both inside. The child appears unharmed." I exhaled so hard my body nearly collapsed. Sophia covered her mouth, her knees buckling. "She's alive," she whispered. "Oh, thank God, she's alive." Detective Chin didn't pause. "Copy that. Units, prepare for entry. Breach on my mark." It felt like forever before I heard the shout, "Police! Open the door!" followed by a crash and the sound of boots pounding against wooden floors. Then silence. Long, unbearable silence. Sophia clutched my arm. "What's happening? Why aren't they saying anything?" I couldn't answer. My mouth was dry, my throat tight, my heart threatening to give out. Then the radio finally came to life. "Suspect in custody. Child secured." "Repeat, child secured," Sophia screamed, a sound somewhere between relief and collapse, and ran forward. The officers tried to stop her, but when she saw Emma being carried out by a female officer, wrapped in a blanket, everything else disappeared. She dropped to her knees on the dirt, arms outstretched. "Mommy!" Emma cried, her small voice cracking as she lunged into Sophia's embrace. I was beside them in seconds, pulling them both close, feeling the warmth of my daughter's tiny body against my chest. She was shaking, crying into my shirt. "That lady said we were getting ice cream, but she locked the doors, Daddy. She said I couldn't call you." I was so scared. I held her tighter, whispering over and over, "You're safe now. She can't hurt you. You're safe." Detective Chin approached quietly, her voice gentle. "She was brave, Mr. Rodriguez. She didn't panic. She kept asking for you both." I looked up at the cabin where Diane Patterson was being led away in handcuffs, her perfect hair disheveled, her face twisted in something between fury and fear. She didn't look like a president or a neighbor anymore. She looked exactly like what she was, a kidnapper. As the sun dipped low over the trees, painting the lake in gold, I carried Emma to the car. She wouldn't let go of Sophia's hand. Her eyes were wide and distant, like she was still somewhere in that dark cabin. We were together again. But something in Emma's eyes had changed. The night after the rescue, the hospital smelled like antiseptic and exhaustion. Emma slept in a small bed, wrapped in blankets, her tiny hand clinging to Sophia's fingers even in her dreams. A nurse had said she was physically fine, no injuries, no bruises, but the way she jolted awake at every sound told a different story. Trauma leaves no visible marks, and that was the hardest part to face. Sophia sat beside her, brushing back Emma's curls, whispering prayers between tears. I stood by the window, staring at the dark parking lot below, trying to make sense of it all. The image of Diane being led away in handcuffs replayed over and over in my mind. The relief of getting Emma back was fading into a deep, boiling anger. She'd stolen my child, terrorized my wife, destroyed our sense of safety. And for what? To prove that people like us didn't belong in her perfect little world? When we finally got home the next morning, the silence in the house was deafening. The chalk drawings were gone, washed away by the rain. The neighborhood looked normal again, neat lawns, trimmed hedges, but everything felt poisoned. Emma wouldn't go near the window. She refused to sleep alone, and every time a car passed outside, she flinched. We were still trying to settle into that uneasy quiet when, 3 days later, there was a knock at our door. For a split second, my heart stopped. But when I opened it, it wasn't another cop or reporter. It was Mark Patterson. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes hollow. He held a folder in one trembling hand. "Mr. Rodriguez," he said quietly, "I know I'm probably the last person you want to see. But please, let me explain." Sophia appeared behind me, tense. "Your wife kidnapped our daughter," she said, her voice sharp. "I know," he said quickly, eyes wet. "And I can't say anything that will make that right. But I didn't know. I swear to you I had no idea she was capable of this. I thought the HOA obsession was just her way of keeping busy. I didn't see how far gone she was." He swallowed hard, then held out the folder. "I brought this. It's from our home security system. Diane didn't know I upgraded it. It records audio throughout the house. There are weeks of recordings in there. You'll want to give them to the police." I took the folder cautiously. "What's in them?" His voice cracked. "Her. Talking about you. About your family. About how to get rid of you. She forged fines, made racist comments, planned everything. Even the kidnapping." Sophia's hand flew to her mouth. "You mean she said she was going to do it?" Mark nodded, tears in his eyes. "3 days before she took Emma, she said, 'If they won't leave voluntarily, I'll give them a reason they can't ignore.' For a long time, none of us spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant barking of a neighbor's dog. Mark wiped his face. "I should have stopped her. I should have seen who she'd become. I was complicit in her cruelty, even if I didn't act like her. Every time she bragged about finding someone, I stayed quiet. And now a child was hurt because of it." He took a deep breath, then reached into his jacket and handed me another envelope. "These are divorce papers. I filed them this morning, and I've already started the process of dissolving the HOA. I've contacted every family she harassed. They're filing complaints and lawsuits. Diane won't control anyone's life again." Sophia's expression softened, though her voice stayed guarded. "Why are you doing this?" "Because it's the only thing I can do to make this right," he said simply. "And because I can't live with the person I let her become. I set up a fund for Emma, for therapy, school, whatever she needs. It's the least I can do." When he left, I sat at the table staring at the folder he'd given us. I opened it and pressed play on the first recording. Diane's voice filled the room, smooth, venomous, eerily calm. "The Rodriguez family is a cancer in this neighborhood," she said. "If the fines don't work, I'll find another way. I've been watching the school. They're careless. I could walk right out with their kid, and no one would stop me." I stopped the playback, my stomach twisting. The hatred in her tone wasn't just bigotry, it was obsession. Sophia reached over, holding my hand tightly. "She planned it, Miguel," she whispered. "Every second of it." I nodded slowly, my jaw tightening. "Then we'll make sure she pays for every second too." But even as I said it, her voice from the recording echoed in my mind, cold, deliberate, and unforgettable. "If they won't leave voluntarily, I'll give them a reason they can't ignore." 4 months later, the courtroom smelled like old wood and nerves. Reporters lined the benches, sketch artists hunched over their pads, and every seat was filled with neighbors, people Diane had once ruled over like a queen. But now, the queen sat at the defense table in a gray suit that did nothing to hide the hollow look in her eyes. Sophia squeezed my hand as we took our seats behind the prosecutor's table. Emma sat between us, clutching her stuffed bear. She didn't understand everything, not really, but she knew this was the day we'd face the woman who took her. The prosecutor, Jennifer Walsh, was a force of nature. Sharp, relentless, her voice slicing through the silence as the trial began. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she said, "this case is about control. About a woman who believed her power as HOA president gave her the right to terrorize her neighbors. And when that wasn't enough, she took their child." Diane's lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit, tried to craft sympathy, painting Diane as a stressed community volunteer who had a mental breakdown. But the jurors' faces hardened as Walsh began to play the evidence. The first screen showed the school security footage. The jurors watched as Diane, smiling, composed, lied her way past the front desk, took Emma's hand, and led her away. The image of that tiny girl walking out the door with her kidnapper was unbearable. I felt Sophia tremble beside me. Then came the audio recordings Mark had turned over. Diane's voice filled the courtroom, her tone cold and deliberate. "They don't belong here. I've worked too hard to let people like that bring down property values." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Diane didn't flinch, but her lawyer's shoulders sagged. Walsh let the silence linger, then played the next clip, Diane's own confession about the kidnapping. "If they won't leave voluntarily, I'll give them a reason they can't ignore." Mark Patterson was called to testify next. His voice shook as he spoke about discovering his wife's plan, about hearing those recordings for the first time. "I thought I knew her," he said, looking down. "But I didn't recognize the woman who took that little girl. I divorced her because some things can't be forgiven." Around us, I could see other families. Neighbors Diane had fined, threatened, humiliated. Many had tears in their eyes. For the first time, Riverside Heights stood united, not in fear, but in justice. When the prosecution rested, the defense tried to play its last card. Diane's attorney stood, voice soft, almost pleading. "My client was under severe emotional distress," he said. "Years of community pressure, lack of mental health support," she snapped. But there was no sympathy left to give. The jurors avoided Diane's eyes, their faces unreadable. Even she seemed to know her fate was sealed. Then the bailiff called the next witness. The words sliced through the quiet like a bell. "Emma Rodriguez, please take the stand." When the bailiff said her name, the entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Emma stood beside the prosecutor, so small that the judge had to lower the microphone and order a booster seat. She wore a lavender dress, her favorite, and held her stuffed bear tightly against her chest. I could see her lips trembling, but her eyes were steady. My little girl had already lived through something most adults couldn't bear, and now she was about to face the woman who caused it. Prosecutor Walsh crouched beside her, her tone soft, almost like a teacher's. "Emma," she began gently, "do you remember the day Mrs. Patterson came to your school?" Emma nodded, voice barely a whisper. "Yes, ma'am." "Can you tell the court what happened?" Emma looked down at her bear for courage, then lifted her head. "She came into my school and said my daddy told her to pick me up. She said we were going to get ice cream." "And did your daddy say that?" She shook her head. "No. He never said that." "Did you know the woman?" Emma's small fingers tightened around her bear. "She lives in our neighborhood. She's always mean to my mommy and daddy." Her voice wavered, but she didn't cry. "She said they made the neighborhood look bad. She said we should go back to Mexico." Emma paused, confusion and hurt flashing across her face. "But we're from California." The words hit like thunder. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge had to clear his throat. I saw one juror put a hand over her mouth. Another's eyes glistened. Sophia's tears spilled silently beside me. Walsh's voice softened further. "How did that make you feel, sweetheart?" Emma blinked rapidly, her chin quivering. "Scared, sad. I didn't understand why she was so mad at us. I just wanted to go home." "What happened after she took you from school?" "She drove really far," Emma said. "I asked to call my mommy, but she said no. She locked the doors. She talked on the phone and said bad things about my daddy and mommy. She said they didn't belong here and she was going to teach them a lesson." Walsh nodded gently. "And how did you feel then?" "I thought I'd never see my parents again." Emma's voice broke for the first time, small sobs escaping as she pressed her face into her bear. "I missed them. I was really scared." The prosecutor placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You were very brave, Emma. You did nothing wrong." Then Walsh turned to the jury. "This," she said quietly, "is the little girl the defendant called property damage. This is the lesson she wanted to teach. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of Emma's quiet sniffles. Diane Patterson sat rigid, her face pale, eyes darting everywhere but at the child she'd terrorized. When Emma climbed down from the witness stand, she glanced toward Diane and asked softly, "Why did you take me? I never did anything bad to you." Diane's lips trembled, but she said nothing. The judge called for order as the jurors wiped at their eyes. And when the gavel finally struck, signaling the end of testimony, every heart in that room knew the outcome before it was spoken. The jury filed out to deliberate. All eyes turned to the foreman. The jury returned after 3 long hours, though it felt like a lifetime. The air in the courtroom was so still you could hear the shuffle of papers, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. Sophia gripped my hand so tightly her nails dug into my skin, and across the room, Diane Patterson sat frozen at the defense table, her posture perfect, her face unreadable. When the bailiff called for order, everyone rose. The foreman, an older man with kind eyes, held a folded paper in his shaking hands. Judge Morrison asked the question that would decide everything. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" "Yes, Your Honor, we have." The foreman cleared his throat, his voice echoing in the silence. "On the count of kidnapping in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Sophia's grip tightened, tears spilling freely. "On the count of child endangerment, guilty." Diane's attorney shifted uncomfortably, whispering something to her, but she didn't respond. Her eyes were locked on the table, unmoving. "On the count of making terroristic threats, guilty." Mark Patterson, seated behind us, lowered his head into his hands. Around him, several of the families Diane had harassed began to cry quietly. "And on the count of hate crime enhancement," the foreman paused, voice breaking slightly. "Guilty." That was it. The dam broke. Applause erupted, muffled sobs, relief, disbelief. People hugged each other, whispered finally, through tears. After years of silence, the community Diane had controlled with fear finally breathed again. Judge Morrison banged his gavel for quiet, but even his voice was thick with emotion. "Mrs. Patterson, you have been found guilty of crimes that go beyond law. They strike at the very heart of decency and humanity. For decades you wielded power like a weapon, punishing those who didn't fit your narrow idea of perfection. And when that wasn't enough, you crossed the line into evil." He leaned forward, eyes hard. "You terrorized a child. You used hate as your compass. But today, justice has caught up with you." Diane's face was pale, her hands trembling, but still she said nothing. The woman who once spoke with arrogance and control now sat silent, powerless. As the gavel came down one final time, I felt Sophia's head rest against my shoulder. Across the room, Emma held her bear and smiled faintly, sensing what we all knew. She couldn't hurt us now. 2 weeks later, the courthouse felt different, quieter, heavier, as if the walls themselves understood what was about to happen. This wasn't a trial anymore. It was a reckoning. Diane Patterson stood at the defense table, thinner now, her hair unkempt, her polished armor of control long gone. Judge Morrison asked if she wished to speak before sentencing. For a long moment she didn't move. Then, to everyone's surprise, she stood, her voice trembling. "Your Honor," she began, "I don't know what happened to me. I used to think I was a good person, organized, responsible, protecting my community. But somewhere along the way, I became obsessed with control. When the Rodriguez family moved in, I told myself I was preserving standards. But the truth is, I was afraid. Afraid of change. Afraid of losing power." She turned slightly, her eyes finding us. "What I did to Emma, there's no excuse. I took a little girl from her parents, and I terrified her to prove a point that never mattered. I see that now. I destroyed my marriage, my reputation, my soul. I can't undo it, but I am sorry." Her voice cracked on the last word. Judge Morrison listened without emotion, then adjusted his glasses. "Mrs. Patterson, remorse is easy to speak after guilt is proven. But the court must respond to your actions, not your tears. He looked directly at her. For the crimes of kidnapping, child endangerment, and hate-motivated threats, this court sentences you to 25 years in state prison, with no possibility of parole for 15. You will pay $500,000 in restitution to the Rodriguez family, and upon release you are prohibited from ever serving on or associating with any homeowners association. The gavel struck once, sharp, final. Diane closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time she looked small. Human. But it was far too late. After court, Mark Patterson approached us one last time. "The divorce is final," he said quietly. "I've sold the house, paid the restitution, and I'm leaving Riverside Heights. I'm joining an immigrant rights nonprofit. It's time I start undoing what people like us allowed for too long." Years later, a letter arrived, postmarked from the state prison. Diane's handwriting was shaky. She wrote of guilt, therapy, and helping other inmates learn English. "You won," she ended, "because you refused to let my hatred win." Sophia and I read it together, then without a word, dropped it into the fireplace. We watched the flames turn her words to ash. We released the last hold Diane had on our family. 3 years have passed since the trial, and time has done what justice alone could not. It has begun to heal us. Emma is 8 now, tall and bright-eyed, her curls longer, her laughter louder. She rides her bike down the same street where Diane once measured our grass with a ruler. And this time, no one complains when she stops to draw with chalk. In fact, the neighbors' kids join her. Flowers, rainbows, smiling suns. Our driveways are a gallery of color again. Riverside Heights has changed. The old HOA dissolved, replaced by a neighborhood committee that actually listens. Mark Patterson kept his promise. He helped build something better, an open, diverse community where people wave instead of whisper. The fear that once lingered here has been replaced with warmth. The air feels lighter now. Sophia's herb garden has grown, wild, spilling with life and color. The scent of cilantro and rosemary fills the air when the breeze passes through. On summer evenings we sit on the porch, watching Emma chase fireflies with her friends. The laughter that used to trigger anxiety now feels like music. One night, as I tucked Emma into bed, she asked me softly, "Daddy, is that mean lady still in prison?" "Yes, sweetheart," I said. "She'll be there for a long time." Emma thought for a moment, her brow furrowing the way it does when she's thinking deeply. "I hope she learns to be nice," she said finally. Being mean made her lose everything. Her words stopped me cold. For all the fear she'd endured, my daughter didn't wish Diane pain. She wished her understanding. In that moment, I realized Emma had already learned something that took me years to see, that hate only destroys the person who carries it. We stayed in our home. We didn't let fear drive us out. And now, when I see Emma's chalk drawings brightening the street, I know we won. Not because the court punished Diane, but because we refused to let her break us. Love did what hate never could. It grew. It healed. It lasted. Sometimes justice comes from courts, sometimes from courage, but always from refusing to let hate win. What would you have done? Tell us your story below.